From the production studios of Epic Financial Strategies here in Red Bank, New Jersey, we are Infinity X, giving a stage and microphone to human excellence in the pursuit of creating infinite sales opportunities by giving a stage and microphone to people like Zander Fryer. What's up, Zander? How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Doing great. Happy Trajectory Tuesday to you, brother. What's going on today?
Oh, just doing some interviews, doing some podcasts, working, having a good time. Can't complain.
Love that. Love that. Folks, this is Zander Fryer. He is the coach of coaches. He coaches over 800 coaches. He's in New York. He's I believe, New York Times bestselling author, aren't you, Zander? Or bestselling author?
Bestselling author, not yet New York Times. We'll get that one next time.
We're working on that.
We're working on that. We're working that.
That's it. So happy to have you here this evening. And so again, folks, this is Zander Fryer. We are Infinity X. Replay will be on weareinfinityx.com. We are Infinity X YouTube. So Zander, it's a pleasure to meet you, brother. And tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, originally from San Diego. Actually, I'm in San Diego right now, but originally from San Diego, grew up here. What was that?
I said I'm envious.
Most people are when I say that, especially right now during the year. But from San Diego originally. Went to UCLA, did kind of the normal, what everybody talks about. You go to college so you can get a degree and then go into the corporate world and get a nice salary, get a nice job and I don't know, make money, get a mortgage until you die. But, that's how it all started, at least.
Yep. And what did you graduate? What type of study did you do at UCLA?
So I graduated electrical engineering. I was actually, so I was in Air Force ROTC. I always tell people, when I was in high school, I was really good at math. So, going into college, it was like, well, you're going to be an engineer. It'll always get great pay. So I went to college and I was in engineering and, I absolutely loved, equations and all of those things. No, I didn't give a shit about that stuff. Right. So I joined Air Force ROTC because I had to pay my way through college. And that's where I really fell in love with leadership and having, first time I ever really felt purpose and mission in my life. But it wasn't until my senior year of college that I actually got a DUI and was kicked out of the Air Force. So graduated. I was actually going to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force. Wasn't going to have anything to do with my degree, but got kicked out my senior year. So electrical engineering it is.
Got it. And then what happened after that?
Yeah. So after that, I, went on to do what any, 21, 22-year-old lost kid would do. They took their degree and they went into the corporate world. Right. So that's what I did. I went and worked for Cisco Systems for about 6 years. As a systems engineer, had essentially what everybody told me was success. Right. I made, around $250,000. I was covering companies like Disney, Facebook, NBC Universal, Verizon, you name it. I was living in Venice Beach, driving around in a BMW, flying first class to meet my clients across the country. Yep. So, had what everybody told me was success, but I didn't really feel fulfilled. I kind of felt empty during that process.
It's so interesting. That's so interesting. So you're a young guy making really fantastic. And what time frame around was this, Zander?
This was back in 2015. So okay. About 6-7 years ago.
Incredible.
2015. I was 26, 27 years old.
26, 27 years old, making $250,000, flying in private jets.
Pretty stupid, right?
But how, what were the telltale signs for you that you weren't feeling the fulfillment? Because I remember, when I was that age, I don't think I was necessarily having that level of success, but I was having some measured success, but I was nowhere near as self-aware as I am right now, obviously. But you sound like you were at that point. What were the telltale signs there?
I think for me, part of the reason that I saw this, because there were some telltale signs, but I think a lot of people don't notice them. I think I noticed them more for several reasons. Part of it was actually because I was in the Air Force. One of the things that they always emphasized was mentorship. Sure. Getting outside eyes on your life, getting mentorship to give you advice. And because of that, I was a big fan of self-development. I read John Maxwell books. I read Jack Canfield books. I was into all of this personal development. So I was always focusing on assessing myself, even when I was in my, my early 20s and even my late teens. So for me, probably the biggest thing was while I was in the corporate world, I made it very clear in the corporations that in the corporate world that I was in, that I wanted to lead people. I loved leading people. That's what I loved when I was in the Air Force. And it was always, more hoops to jump through. And it was, 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And I was making great money. And every 6 months I would get a raise and I'd get a promotion and it would be great. I'd feel amazing. And then I'd feel this sharp peak of joy. And then this just dropped down to like a dull, just back to normality sort of thing. And it was just like, every time that happened, it was like one peak of joy and then just back to like the daily grind. And I'm a happy guy, but
Right.
it was not a happy way to be living for me. Right. And it wasn't what I truly
So
loved to do.
I'm hearing dopamine hits, right? It was a
For
dopamine
sure.
hit followed action back. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
It's
Yeah.
the difference between the dopamine hits and the sheer, like, true joy and happiness and fulfillment, right? The
Yep.
sustained joy and happiness. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And so now you were with Cisco for 6 years, and as you kind of scaled there, and as you move forward, and you started to identify that leadership was something that you wanted to explore at a higher level. When was it that you identified that you wanted to pivot? Now, did you remain in corporate after you left Cisco? It sounds like I got a funny story coming here, so I want to hear.
I did not. I did not remain in corporate. So here's how it happened. About 6 years in, and this is kind of where the mentorship becomes pretty crucial.
Yep.
So I always tell people, in any like major change or transformation in life, I always feel like there's a buildup. It's like a balloon. There's a buildup, there's a blowing up, and then there's a pop. Right. And I think for 6 years, there was a constant buildup of me getting clearer on a lot of the things that were going on in my life, and really understanding what was important to me. And the pop, one day I was having a conversation with a mentor of mine, and he was a health and wellness entrepreneur, made 7 figures, traveled the world, like, and was just so happy because what he was doing was helping people get healthier, helping them in so many different ways. And that was something that always aligned with me. And I was out with him one weekend, and this conversation was probably lubricated by a little bit of tequila, I think.
The best
And
conversations are, brother. Let's just
always are.
right.
And he just asked me, he goes, Xander, you're so young, like, you could do so many things in life. And he just asked me the question that really changed my life. He said, what would you do if you couldn't fail?
Hmm.
And this is actually the title of my TED talk. He said, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And I sat with it for a second. I said, honestly, I'd mentor people full time. I don't know what that is, but that's what I do. I miss it so much from the Air Force. It's the one thing that I miss from the Air Force, is getting to lead and mentor people. And I mentor in the early and career network in Cisco right now, but it's like 5% of my time. And he goes, great. Why don't you figure out how to do that? And I just kind of giggled. I was like, what do you mean? Like, be like a Tony Robbins character or something? Like, that's hilarious. That's adorable. And he goes, well, seriously, why wouldn't you do it? And I said, well, I've got this amazing career. I'm being paid almost $250,000. I'm on a fast track to become, one of the youngest directors in Cisco's recent history. Like, I'm as I'm spouting all of this stuff off, I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is all bullshit. Like, none of that really matters to me. And he goes, Xander, let me just ask you a question. Just because you're good at something, does that mean you should do it? And just because you're on a track, and just because you're on a track and you've put a bunch of time into it, does that mean you should stay on the track? And he said, the one thing, he was about 15 years older than me at the time. He said, the one thing that you'll learn when you get to my age, he said, there's one resource you can never get back, and it's your time.
That's
And
exactly.
every moment is either on purpose or off purpose. And every moment off purpose is a moment wasted.
Ooh, say that again. Say that again, Xander, for all the good folks that are on here.
He said, every moment is either on purpose or off purpose. And every moment off purpose is a moment wasted. Wow. And that was the line. That was the line that really got me. And he said, Xander, do you know the difference between you and me? And I was like, joking. I was like, well, you make a shit ton more money than I do. And he said, maybe. And he said, the difference between you and me is I'm actually living my dream. And ever since you got kicked out of the Air Force, you've just been dreaming one.
Wow. Whoa, that hit you right between the eyes, I bet.
And this was, I was this cocky mid-20s kid making more than both of my parents combined.
Yep.
Pretty sure my tax payment was more than both of my parents combined at that point.
God bless.
Right. And
Yep.
and I'm sitting here just this cocky little shit, and he just straight through. All I see is a scared kid to do what he really knows he needs to do.
Can I share with you how much I identify with the statement that you just made? So about 4 years ago, I was operating as an independent financial advisor, right? And
Yeah.
I qualified. I felt like I was having a measure of success, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's level of success and measurement of success is different, but I'm kind of feeling who I was a little bit, right? And so I qualified for this company trip, and I met at that time, and got to know better at that time my soon-to-be partner, Rob Gill, who is the founder of Epic Financial Strategies, my company, right?
Yeah.
And on these trips, part of what you got to do is you have to make presentations to everybody else that's there, right? So I make a presentation. It's a financial presentation that we affectionately call Up the Mountain, Down the Mountain. And it's about the two different phases of, accumulation of wealth and distribution of wealth and all this stuff. And long story endless. After I make the presentation, I remember I had a private moment with Rob, and he said, Dave, he said that presentation was fantastic, but I got a question for you. Who are you telling that story to? And it hit me. I swear, Zander, it hit me. I stuttered. I stutter stepped literally. I had nothing to say, because what he made incredibly evident to me is that you can have all the book knowledge in the world, but if you don't have a larger stage and microphone to share your unique identity with people, then what's the purpose? So I totally identify with that. That's it. We have those aha moments from people that would ultimately become mentors of ours that really kind of take shape and shape what our trajectory going forward is going to be. So I totally identify.
And it's amazing how it's that one line. It's that one line that comes out at the perfect time, and it just cuts through all the rest and hits home.
Yep. And so when he shared that with you, now were you feeling, oh, who the hell is this guy? He didn't know what the F he's talking about, or was it like what was going on internally with you there?
I trusted him. He was someone that I respected. I think that's really important for people to understand. When you find mentorship from somebody, you want to find a mentor. I always tell people, you want to find a mentor that you would love to switch places with them, right? If you wouldn't love to switch places with them in every aspect of their life, not just not just financially or something like that, right? He lived a life where he was great financially. He was happily married, beautiful family, and he was madly in love, and he traveled the world and had fun doing it all. I was like, at that point in time, I was like, I want to be this guy. And so when he told me something, it's kind of that idea of you can't read the label from inside the bottle. Yeah. Right. And so I had to, that stuff it's never easy to hear that kind of feedback, right? It's never enjoyable, because right afterwards, comes a whole whirlwind of discomfort and work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
But you have to be open enough to allow that stuff to come in. And I think for me, he was the right person to say it, because I admired him in the way that he lived. And if he saw something that I didn't, I was going to listen. Yep. And so it hit home, it landed. To kind of finish off the story for you, that was a Saturday. That next Sunday, I literally didn't talk to a single person the entire day. I could not stop thinking about the conversation because it landed so well. And then Monday morning, I went back to my morning meetings, and it was like, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. with the Disney team, and 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. with the sales team, and 10 a.m. to 11 with the NBC team, and 11 to 12. And each of these hours, at the end of it, I could not stop thinking, I'm never going to get that hour back. And that hour was off purpose.
Unbelievable.
The next one, I'm never going to get that hour back. By the time it was noon, all I could think about was, I'm never going to get that morning back. And that morning was off purpose. And I literally called my manager, and I was like, Frank, I'm done. And he was like, what do you mean? Who gave you a job offer? And I was like, nobody gave me a job offer. And he's like, well, where are you going? What are you doing? And I said, I don't know, but I know it's not this. And that's it.
Unbelievable. We are Infinity X, giving the stage and microphone to human excellence. This is Zander Fryer, just sharing an unbelievable journey at 26 years old, walking away from a corporate opportunity that most people would kill for, but fulfillment is so powerful, and mentorship is so powerful. And the nuggets being dropped here are already absolutely fire. Folks, if you have a question for Zander, please put it into the chat. We will get there in a few minutes. And so, dude. Hold on a second. So, you walk into him and you're like, look, I don't know where I'm going, but
Yeah.
no, I don't belong here. So what happened next?
Yeah, and I think for me that the big thing there was, the idea of time really resonated with me, right?
Yeah.
And I had least recently lost an uncle, and in the next few weeks I would actually lose my best friend to suicide. So it was something that was repeating going on in my life, was that we don't have a lot of time here on earth, and if you're not spending it properly, you're not going to get any more. I think that was a really,
by the way, brother.
thank you for that, man. And yeah, so for me, the next thing was, I basically just quit cold turkey, no idea what I was doing. No network, never been an entrepreneur before, never been a coach before. But I knew that I wanted to coach and lead others. So the first thing that I did was I hired pretty much everybody that I possibly could to expedite or time collapse that learning process. There's the famous quote from Tony Robbins. He said, "Success loves speed," and also success. What's he say? He says, "Oh man, you can learn from other success, right? So it's repeatable. You just follow their processes."
Leaves clues.
Success leaves clues. There you go. Success loves speed, and success leaves clues. And so what I did is I basically just hired all the mentors I could. And I know what a lot of people are thinking. They're like, yeah, but Zander, you made $250,000. So you just had this stockpile of money that you could spend on everything. And I will remind everybody that I'm a millennial and I don't know how to save money. So I did not have a stockpile of money. I had spent all my cash at, trying to fill that void, buying beer at the, rounds of beer at the bar and trips to Cabo on weekends and stuff like that. So I had about 3 months worth of living expenses saved up. And I spent every dime of it in the first 30 days on different mentorship and coaching programs and masterminds and you name it. I was trying to learn how to become an online entrepreneur, learn how to do coaching, learn how to do all these things and actually turn it into a full-time business. And about 3 months in, I was at this point now $25,000 in debt, maxed out 2 credit cards, and still not making a dime in my business. I was about 2-3 weeks away from not being able to pay rent. And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. And that's when it really all started to click. It was almost like a combination lock. I had hired one of my last mentors and it was like the last key in the combination lock and it started to open up and I got my first handful of clients and I ended up making about 13K that first month that I ended up making any money. The next month was 17K. Then it was 24, 32, 42. And it just kind of started to scale up from there. And this is all, as the cliche, millennial quits corporate job to start life coaching business. Right. So, at that point we had kind of learned, I had really learned what really worked for me. And I'd start to build a network of other coaches, life coaches, health coaches, career coaches, that were all like, you just did in like 3 months what I've been trying to do for 3 years. Like, what the hell did you just do? And that's really where high impact coaching was born. I had a handful of people that were just like, look, I don't care what you just did. You just need to teach it to me and I'll pay you for it. And so I had about five of my friends and network that were like, I just need to hire you to teach me how to do whatever you just did. And I went and worked with them and I was like, I don't know if this will work, but I went and taught them what I just did because clearly I had a knack for it and it worked for them. And so they each went and told a couple more people and that's how high impact coaching started to grow. So like you mentioned, we've helped over 800 coaches build multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses since then. But our big passion is, every single one of these coaches, just like myself, has a huge mission and a desire to serve other people. And most of them never really get the opportunity to serve at the level they want to, simply because they don't learn the business side of it to really help them get there.
So thank you for that. That's what a journey. Unbelievable, folks. If you have a question.
And by the way, these are a lot of the highlights, right? This all sounds great on paper, but like I mentioned, there's a lot of low lights to go there. Like we talked, there's a lot of times when I was, late at night crying, no idea what I was doing. Like I mentioned, lost one of my closest friends, been through tough breakups, been through all of that stuff too. So.
And thank you for that, because you're right. It's not all just a bed of roses. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that first couple
Yeah.
of months when you started to scale upwards. So first thing, who were the avatars? Who were the individuals that you had focused in on, whether you want to call it a target market or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that you centered on to prospect towards to gain new coaching clients? Who were those people and why were they?
For me, it was pretty easy. It was my past self. It was the person that I wanted to save from going down the path that I had gone down. It was helping prevent someone from going down the corporate world path of just getting stuck in the hamster wheel, going down that rabbit hole and ending up, I was lucky enough to get out at 6 years. There's a lot of people that go 10, 15, 20, 25 years before they realize I don't want to be doing this anymore. And by that point, you're kind of screwed.
It's a
Right.
scary thing too, because then you find yourself, you're 45 years old, married with 2 kids and a mortgage and all
And a
these.
mortgage, and you've got all these other things keeping you locked in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it was pretty clear. I wanted to help my past self. I wanted to help people do something more fulfilling to them. And it was really, it's funny because like I look back on it now, it was really kind of a career coaching offer. I was helping corporate professionals transition to careers they really loved. So it really was a career coaching offer, but I wasn't helping people with resumes. I wasn't helping people with interviews. I was helping people get clear on what really mattered to them. And I was helping people learn how to follow that and overcome the fears of judgment, the fears of criticism, the fears of, everything else that's preventing them from doing what really matters. And that's what I was focusing on.
How do you go about doing that? How do you go about overcoming some of those limiting beliefs?
Oh, how much time do we have?
we got about 45 minutes, brother. So
we can keep going.
Let's put the sleeves. Let's go.
So do you know what percent of your brain is your subconscious mind?
I do not.
So your subconscious mind is about 95. Some scientists believe it's closer to 98% of your brain. So you, unfortunately, are only 5% of you. Yeah, kind of scary and a little bit humbling.
Yeah.
Right. So our brain, the high majority of our brain, and therefore 90 to 95% of our actions, beliefs, habits, and thoughts are all dictated by this unconscious or subconscious mind, right? The conscious thinking us is really only 5% of us, right? So the way that I explain this to people is that subconscious is about 95% of your brain, and it's like a supercomputer. It's constantly being programmed. Now, do you know how to program your brain?
No, I do not.
Like you weren't taught this as a kid. This is the reason my podcast and my book are called Shit You Don't Learn in College, right? Like I bet that fancy mic you have sitting in front of you, I bet you got a user's manual for that mic, but nobody gave you a user's manual for your brain and your emotions and how you as a human operate to be fulfilled and happy and joyful, right? And so one of the biggest things that I always tell people is like, before you move forward on anything else, you need to know how you as a person operate. And so I'll kind of fill a lot of our listeners in around this. So your subconscious mind is 95% of your brain. It is programmed every single moment, every single day, and has been since the moment that you were born. You can't even remember most of these programmings. Now, there's 2 things that program your subconscious mind: repetition and emotion. Okay. David, do you remember where you were when you found out about 9/11?
Yes.
Where were you?
I was in my car heading from a business meeting on just about to get onto the West Side Highway.
You see those details that just came up for you?
Yep.
Like this is carved into your brain. Were you consciously thinking about 9/11 before I brought it up?
No, I was not.
No, of course. Right. But because that was such an emotionally heightened situation for so many of us, I can remember exactly where I was. I was in class and I was they brought it up on the monitors, and no joke, I laughed because I didn't think it was real. So I was like, oh my God, I just laughed at at the Twin Towers being hit by it was so emotional for me.
Yeah.
Right. Because I didn't think it was real. Now that moment is so emotional.
Because it was so ludicrous, right? It was
so crazy to me.
Yeah.
It was so crazy to me.
Yeah.
Right. But for anybody who remembers where they were when they found out about 9/11, I guarantee you can remember vivid details about that situation because it was so emotional. Right. Now, there are thousands, probably tens of thousands of these moments across your life. And a high majority of them are heavily concentrated in your earlier parts of life between the ages of 3 and 10, where, right now, for something to be a life or death situation for me, it's actually got to be pretty close to life or death situation, right?
Yep.
But when I'm 5 years old, anything can be a life or death situation. I got, I do a lot of psychosomatic and subconscious work with myself and our clients to literally unprogram them and reprogram them. And when I was doing one of these sessions, I found out that, when I was 5 years old, I got locked in a bathroom because I ran away from my mom and I ran into the bathroom and I slammed the door behind me and the door handle broke. And I look back at that right now and I'm like, that's hilarious. That's really funny.
Right.
But as the 5-year-old me, I legitimately thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to run out of air. It was terrifying.
Yep.
And so the story that I told myself in my head, the programming that was then created was, if I have a conflict with people, it's going to create a life or death situation for me. So I avoided conflict like the plague in a high majority of my life.
Wow. Wow. And it roots back to, wow, that's unreal. So it roots back to that traumatic experience and your frontal lobe, right? When you're at that age, when is when you're developed, right? So it's that's unreal. That's unbelievable.
So, and as most of us is like the conscious thinking us right now are like, oh yeah, I went through a bad breakup, a couple of years ago. And I think that's programmed me a little bit. Most of the stuff happened well younger than that. And you have no idea what it was because it, frankly, like me getting locked in the bathroom, I look back on them like, that's not that big of a deal. But as that 5-year-old me, it was completely traumatizing. And I didn't even remember it for 25, 30 years or whatever it was. Right. Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned is how do we overcome these limiting beliefs? How do we overcome these fears? The first thing that I want you to understand, I want everybody to understand is that frankly, none of these fears are real. None of them, right? Almost all of these fears are fabricated. There's two fears that we are actually born with. Do you know what they are?
Fear and greed, maybe?
We're born with the fear of loud noises and the fear of heights.
The fear of loud noises and heights. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, which makes sense as like evolutionary man, right? You don't want your baby to like walk off a cliff accidentally. And if they hear a saber-toothed tiger roar, you don't want them going towards it, right? That's evolutionarily helpful. Every other fear that we have has been either socially or personally programmed into our brain from experiences like I just explained, right? They're socially programmed fears. And now take public speaking, for example, right? So when you get up on stage to speak in front of an audience, or, majority of people get up on stage to speak in front of an audience, glossophobia, fear of public speaking. Most people fear public speaking more than death. Mind-blowing, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get up on stage, what happens? Your body physiologically has a fight or flight response, like you're about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yep.
Right. Your arms get sweaty, so you taste bad to the tiger. Your neck stiffens, your eyes widen, so you can spot it wherever it might be. Your blood rushes to your extremities, so you can literally like fight the tiger if you need to. No joke. Your body actually, your bowels get ready to evacuate in case you need to be lighter. This is why boxers that are really nervous, they have to go to the bathroom right before. Yep. Right. So this is the fight or flight response. But like, you're not going to die by getting up on stage and talking in front of people. Right. But our body physiologically thinks we are going to die because of these subconscious programmings. So the first step to overcoming these fears, number one, is understanding that high majority of them are not real. And our body is physiologically responding like we're about to die. So as soon as you can consciously realize that you're not about to die, and you can start to tell that 5% of your brain, hey, you're going to be all right, you can start to override the 95% of your brain. And no matter what fear you're feeling, you can still take action anyways.
Incredible.
The first step is we never completely get rid of fear, right? Unless, I don't know if you're a meditator. Like I always tell people, if you meditate like 8 hours a day and eventually you start to levitate off the ground, maybe then you're void of fear. But for the rest of us humans, like you're always going to have fear. The true sense of worth and the true sense of success is not getting rid of fear. It's feeling the fear and taking action anyways. And when you understand where the fear is coming from, it really helps a majority of us go, okay, thank you, crazy little, scared version of Zander in my head. I appreciate the feedback, but I'm going to go speak on stage anyways.
We are Infinity X with a stage and mic. And by the way, all of you entrepreneurs out there, if you're not watching the brain science of this breakthrough right here, you haven't been taking notes. Yeah, I take notes, get a pen, write it down, go back because, Zander, so like in our world, in financial services, one of the biggest fears that you see is the fear of rejection, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to ask somebody for a check. I'm not going to ask somebody for a partnership. I'm not going to ask somebody to take action because I'm afraid of the word no, right?
Mhm.
And that coaches people out of our industry left and right, and
Yeah.
so is that a reoccurring pattern that you see in
You
the people
see,
that you're coaching? Or
you'll see the fear of rejection everywhere, and I'll tell you why. The fear of rejection is closely tied to the emotion of shame, right? So the fear of rejection basically results in, if I'm rejected, I would feel ashamed. And as evolutionary man, you're actually going to be, if you get like socially shamed, you're going to be outcast,
right,
right?
right,
So take it back to, you're living in a small community of 200 people in a tribe. If you're socially shamed and rejected by someone or multiple people, you're now going to be outcast. Well, you're going to die, right? I don't know how to explain it to you. You're going to be eaten by a saber-tooth tiger. You're not going to be able to fend for it. You're going to die,
right.
right? So shame, Dr. David Hawkins talks about this. Shame as an emotion is the lowest energetic emotion that we can feel as humans.
Mm.
So right above death. In fact, shame is so low that it is, and I've done a lot of studying around this after losing my best friend. Shame is the main reason that people actually take their life. So people will fear shame more than death.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So to think about it, right? We're like, oh, like, stop being so afraid of getting a no, stop being afraid of being rejected. Well, subconsciously, your programming is literally fear this just as much as death.
Yeah.
Because as evolutionary man, it would mean being outcast and then eventually dying. So that feeling of shame or being socially outcast is one of the hardest fears to overcome for any of us, because we don't understand where it's coming from, right? And again, once you start to understand where it's coming from, and you can start to have this conversation of, I'm just afraid of being rejected because my programming, my 95% of my brain, my programming has led me to believe that being socially outcast would lead to death, right? But the reality is, if you ask for that check and they say no, you're not going to be socially
I'm actually
outcast.
going to socially outcast or die, right?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So, I think that's the thing that I would say there, because, and it's, the fear of rejection. It's also the fear of just being criticized in general. The fear of people judging you in general is just such a massive, massive fear. And it's one of the biggest ones that I've found prevent people from being successful in any area, whether they're coaches, whether they're financial advisors, whatever they might be in any space. The fear of criticism, the fear of people judging you, and that fear of rejection is by far the biggest limiter.
We are Infinity X giving a stage and microphone to Zander Fryer, the coach of coaches, coaches over 800 coaches, best-selling author.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Hell yeah, it is. Absolutely. And I hope the mouth keeps getting fuller and fuller, brother, because you're definitely up to some really, really unbelievable things. Replay on weareinfinityx.com. We are Infinity X YouTube. You have a question for Zander, please put it into the chat. So you are on this unbelievable trajectory, and then you start to identify and you have, I think you had mentioned you had like 5 friends who were looking to try to get into the coaching space that really approached you and said, hey, what are you doing so much differently? And that sparked a business model, right? That sparked the birth of what and by the way, and the name of your podcast is The Shit That They Don't Teach You in College. I think that is one
shit
of,
you don't learn in college. Yeah.
you don't learn in college. That is one of the dopest names of a podcast I've ever heard in
Thanks.
my life.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So
just so you're aware, it took a 2-year battle with the that went to the U.S. Supreme Court to actually get that trademarked. So that might be another story we can dig into.
we're going to play in that space a little bit. Absolutely. Yep. I want to hear a lot more about that. That's ridiculous. Shit, you just
I threw you off, didn't I? I threw you off.
I mean, 2 years in the Supreme Court, that'll put just about anybody up. So coaches are approaching you, and so
yeah.
I fashion myself, I'm a financial coach, right? I take a major leadership role with clients, with businesses, et cetera. But what are some, anybody is constantly looking to monitor and measure and scale upward, right? In the coaching, in the direct coaching to entrepreneur space, what are you finding that is a reoccurring pattern of things that coaches could improve on, or that you're constantly looking to try to get people out of doing in terms of bad habits?
Well, honestly, the truth is there's different things at every stage, right? So there's a lot of bad habits that, I always tell people what got you here won't get you there, right? So there's bad habits that prevent people from getting to their first six figures or their first, 20K per month. And those bad habits are not going to be the same as what gets someone from 20K a month to 40 to 60K a month. And those bad habits are not going to be the same when you're going from 60 to 200K a month, right? So really they're different at every stage. I would say in the very beginning, it's a lot of the personal stuff, right? Like I always tell people, really getting your coaching business up and running is it's as much of a personal development journey as it is a business development journey. There's no other business in the world where you are the product, the face, the market, the everything, right? If you were to run like an e-com business selling, yoga mats on Amazon, right? When you get a 3-star review on Amazon for your yoga mat, you go read the review and you go, oh, they said, it needs to be firmer and it smelt funky after 3 uses. And I can fix this with different material and stuff like that. Right. Not a huge deal. But again, like we were talking about, fear of judgment, fear of criticism, fear of rejection. What happens when you have a client that gives you a 3-star review and you're the product, right? Now we start to take that as a self-worth issue. If they said that my product wasn't, the level that they wanted it to be, that means that I'm not the level that I need to be, and I am unworthy. And you start to take these criticisms as your self-worth issues rather than taking them as learning opportunities, right? So, it's different in the start, just like we mentioned, it's the shame, fear of judgment, fear of criticism, overcoming that, and then learning the fundamentals of marketing, sales, things like that. Once you start to get up into the higher levels, it's the bad habits of not focusing in the right areas, or I always tell people what takes someone from multiple 6 figures to 7 figures is not doing more things, it's doing less things better.
Sure.
Right. And most people don't really realize that. They get to 20K a month, 30K a month, they're like, oh, I need to go do more stuff. And I'm like, actually, no, you probably need to do less things and you need to get better at them. You can get to the 7-figure mark with one product, one audience, one avatar, one lead generation method, one conversion method, and you'll make it to 7 figures, maybe even multiple 7 figures. And then you have to start to consider doing a second product and things like that. So it's really different at every stage.
We have a question coming in from Michelle right now, and her question is curious how you might advise someone how to set rates for services. Oh, this is an interesting question. Services who is traditionally paid through an insurance model, which is half their current private pay rate, which is less than the value of their service. That's an interesting question. How would you respond to that one?
Yeah, I think, and help me clarify this if I'm going down the wrong direction, but I think you're doing that backwards. I don't set my rates based on what's done in the past or based on what anything else is. I set my rates based on the value of the service, and I learn on communicating that value better. So most people have this issue because they think that they're going to set a rate for whatever service it is, and that's going to be what allows them to sell it. Well, that's because most people don't know how to communicate the value of what they're doing. If you can help people understand the value, we have clients all the time. I'll use, we're talking about using insurance to help pay for it or help cover it. We have clients in the health and wellness space. Actually, just got off a call earlier today with one of our clients who's a naturopathic doctor. She was used to her clients, a majority of what she would do with clients per session, part of it being covered under insurance. And we actually moved her to what we refer as a high ticket or a premium price coaching program. So she now sells clients to work with her for anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks for between $4,000 and $6,000, right? Which was essentially somewhere between 5 to 10x what she was charging before. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
And her big question was, Zander, how am I going to convince people, to pay this when, they normally pay with insurance? I said, you're not going to convince them anything. You're going to help them realize the value of this so that it doesn't matter that it's not covered by insurance. Right. And when she was working with people, right now she's working with people that are having hormonal issues. They're struggling with PCOS. They're struggling with autoimmune disorders. Right. And so for her, like PCOS or autoimmune disorders, that's going to affect your entire life.
Sure.
Right. It's going to affect your career. It's going to affect your mental state, your mindset. It ruins marriages, right? How much does a divorce cost? Right. So, the truth is when somebody really understood how much this diagnosis was ruining their life, $5,000 to fix it is nothing. if they
Sure.
can get their energy back, if they can get their life back, they can get their career back, get their marriage back. So I would say, setting your rates. I almost never set my rates based on what people traditionally pay, right? I always set my rates based on what the value I'm bringing to someone actually is. And then you have to learn how to communicate that value. In the end, we all have to learn the art of sales. And I think a lot of people have a very negative stigma around sales, but I will tell everybody right now that you're all salesmen and women. If you have a partner or a husband or a wife, you sold that person on spending the rest of their damn life with you.
Absolutely.
So you sold someone on something.
Yep.
And to me, sales is leadership. John Maxwell says leadership is influence. Influence is sales. Therefore, sales and leadership are the same thing. Right?
The absence of value, my brother. Absolutely.
100%. And if you're doing something that is worthwhile in this world, that's helping people, you better work on, we're talking about limiting beliefs. You better start working on that limiting belief and fear, and realizing that that is a subconscious programming that maybe your parents gave to you, or you learned from watching some TV show growing up that is preventing you from actually moving forward and helping people. And you better start working on it, because there's probably dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people out there that need your help. And if you don't learn how to sell your product or service, they're not going to get your help.
Outstanding. Michelle, thank you so much for that question. I hope that answered it. That was drop the mic dime golden nugget right there, Zander. That was fantastic. By the way, that's applicable for anybody that's in any type of, integrous sales environment,
Yeah, we'll emphasize the integrous sales environment for sure.
It absolutely needs to be, because if it's not, you get out right now.
Yep.
So I love what you're up to, brother. So you start coaching coaches, right? And then what happened next, right? As you really started to scale into, tell me going through this journey.
I mean, the next 4 years are just the entrepreneurial journey. It's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of learning, a lot of lefts and rights, and misturns, growing a team. And for me, I think, as I keep growing through this business, it's just, I tell people, building an entrepreneurial business, and I kind of mentioned this, is the best personal development that I've ever been through, because at every stage I have to learn to let go of the past version of me. Right. So, the me now that's pushing for an 8-figure business, and we've got a team of 20, and, we're growing and scaling and impacting, hundreds of people's lives every single month. The version that I am now can't even recognize the person I was 2 years ago, who couldn't even recognize the person I was when I left Cisco.
150%.
Right?
Yep.
And I think that for me is one of my favorite parts about being an entrepreneur, is because, if you get stuck at a level, most of the time it's because you've become attached to who you are at that level. And there's a limitation that is kind of preventing you from going to that next stage and impacting more people, having more freedom, more abundance, being able to give back more, right? I couldn't ever imagine how much we're able to give back right now, because of, not only the people that we work with are then going back and giving back to the community, but also just because of the cash flow we have, we get to donate to some amazing causes that change people's lives.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And Zander, let me dive into that growth model a little bit, because two questions. The first is, when did you're leaving me open to ask about 60 different questions with every single statement.
We'll take it wherever you want to go, man. Wherever you want to go.
So when did you recognize that you were going to have to start to replicate yourself, and what were the qualities of the individual when you were bringing them onto your team that you were specifically looking into?
Yeah, that's a great question. I recognized that very early on, and kind of like I mentioned to you, my part of the reason that I left Cisco was to lead people.
Yes.
Right. So I've been a big fan of team and building team since the very beginning. I think my first hire that I had, I made it to about the 50K a month mark on my own before I brought on my first team member and started to replicate myself. And frankly, the types of people that I was looking for, I was looking for people that were aligned first and foremost. Mm-hmm. I always tell our clients, whenever you have a role that you want to fill, I always ask myself 3 questions. Number 1, do they want to do it? Number 1, can they do it? Number 2, will they do it? Number 3, do they want to do it? Mm-hmm. And the third question is always the most important to me. The can they do it and will they do it are kind of, additives to that. But if someone really wants to be a part of your team, really wants to be a part of the community, is aligned in your vision, a lot of the time you can teach tactical skills, you can teach these other things, but there's certain things that you can't teach that are innate, and alignment is one of them.
100%.
right? I,
Yep.
I think, there's something to be said about values as well, like that value, those value fits and cultural fits. People talk about cultural fit all the time: hire for culture, train for strategy, train for skill sets, things like that. And I've always found that to be true. Every time that we hired somebody that had the skill set, but we were like, oh, maybe they're a cultural fit, they were gone within the first 30 days.
Absolutely.
Everybody that's made it past 30 days, and again, I will mind you that my company is mostly millennials, they've been with me for years. Right. So like, you keep millennials on for years, you're doing something right. But majority of it is just because they're aligned.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, millennials are marketing in it, and your generation is marketing in a different generation than my generation was, which was Generation X. I mean, again, in financial services, we are taught from a marketing standpoint the most antiquated, old school, repetitive, guaranteed failure rates that you'll ever see, and
Yeah.
they literally haven't changed their models in years.
What are they taught, by the way? I want to know now. This sounds great.
They're taught how to write down the 200 people, they call it the Project 200, the 200 people that, 10 friends and family, and, or 10 people that they went to high school with, 10 people that they went to college with, and go have coffee with them and, see if they might be interested in either giving you a referral or, hearing about insurance or something of that, and they're not being taught how to create systems where conditioned sales conversations are finding you, but you're constantly seeking to find them. And the time clock is ticking against you. Essentially, it's take spaghetti, throw it up against the wall, see what sticks. And it's just it's old school. It's incredibly old school.
Yeah.
You on the other hand have hacked into a couple of different marketing verticals. So one of them is social media, right? You have a big following on some. When did you dive deeper into that, and what was your strategy in that space?
Yeah, I think I dove into that from the very beginning. It's funny because I didn't even have an Instagram or a Facebook when I started my business, because I hated social media. And frankly, I still hate social media. But I think for me, it was a reframing in my mind of what social media was. To this day, I still never consider social media. And my wife hates me because of this, because I don't use social media as a social platform to post my personal stuff. It's business media to me. Social media is the most amazing tool, at least to this point in our history, for entrepreneurs ever invented to connect with your ideal audience anywhere in the world. It's amazing to me, right? And I hear a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't want to use social media for my lead. I'm like, that's fine. Don't. You're just like, it's like if you're getting into a fight and someone gives you a gun and the other team's fighting with swords, like, don't put down the gun. Right. Like, it's an amazing piece of technology, right? Like, yeah, like, get rid of it if you don't like it, but just understand you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball if you do. Right. So, for me, I hated social media, but I recognized it as business media. This is a tool that is clearly amazing to develop an intimate relationship. And don't get me wrong, like, I think the old antiquated stuff it has its place. I think it's really important to go sit down and have these conversations with people, to understand the emotions, to understand your avatar, to understand the language they're using, what works, what doesn't, how most people are feeling, and what really connects with people. I think there's no way to replace these conversations, but you don't have to go set up, an hour to go to a coffee meeting to do this all the time. You can actually have these conversations on social. I could go have 20 of them right now on my Instagram. By, instead of having to go set up a coffee date with, some high school or college friends, I could literally reach out to 20 people and just start having a conversation with them and learn what their big problems are, learn how they're struggling in their business, learn how, what's working, what's not, and really get an understanding of the language they use. And I can do that all before we're done with the show.
Yep. And, my friend, Sean Callaghy is always talking about what you want to elevate is your stage and microphone, right?
Yeah.
Make your stage and microphone bigger. The more people that you're able to share your unique heroic identity with, the larger opportunity you're going to have conditioned conversations, because your stage is bigger. So when you're looking at a post that you're going to put out on social media, is it targeted at specific individuals, or you see you laughing? There's going to be something funny behind this one. Is it targeted at specific individual? Like, what goes into the thought dynamic behind your posts?
The reason I'm laughing is because I think I'm not typical for most entrepreneurs. I tell everybody that about 50% of my posts are just a test. I'm just playing, like my social media is just a testing ground for me. So the reason that I bring that up is because we'll do both. We'll do everything. In the end, the goal for, like I mentioned, it's business media.
Yep.
So if I find that, doing some more generic posts are connecting better, I'll do more generic posts. If I find that doing something targeted and specific is doing better, I'm going to do more of it. So most of the time, I don't really develop a strategy. I actually go test out. I'm constantly saying like, hey, what's something different we can test out here? What's something we haven't tried? And we'll actually go, I think a lot of people are like, your social media has to be perfect. Your social media has to be dialed in and on point. And literally every week we're like, hey, let's throw some more shit at the wall and see if this one sticks. And because of that, we've actually developed a really good idea of what does stick and what converts and what doesn't convert for our audience. But so much of it is just testing. I don't think there's a right answer. And I have a buddy of mine, I'll tell you now, the concrete answer is most of our stuff is a little bit broader. And then we have some really, really concrete stuff that's very, very specific and targeted at the same time that falls within the broader messaging. And I've found a couple of my friends do it very differently, right? They have big followings, and maybe one is just incredibly specific on absolutely everything that he does, and the other one is just completely broad in everything that he does, and both of them work fine for them, right? But in the end, it comes down to testing. It's kind of like trying to hit a bullseye with a bow and arrow on the back of a horse while you're riding backwards.
Oh, you're right. On a bumpy road, right?
On a bumpy road while the target is also on a horse, right? So in the end, like you got to know that like your audience, your offer, your personality, like you kind of have to figure out what's going to work for you by testing some stuff, in my opinion.
So, yeah, and that's a great access point for me because, there's a lot of different, you talk about business media, but there's a lot of different verticals that you can center and focus on.
Yeah.
We've been able to build out really fantastic content and followership on YouTube. My partner has unbelievable growth rate in TikTok, right? Which is, I personally didn't see that one coming, but it's rapidly, I think.
And I would bet that he's probably got like a more targeted focus on TikTok, right?
Yeah, to a degree, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and that took some trial and error too,
Yeah.
I would say. But what outlets in that space are you focusing? Is it LinkedIn? I mean, every one of those is different in its own way. What are you focusing?
They're all like languages. This is what I tell people. Every one of them is like learning a language, right? So I think a lot of people are like, I'm going to go, especially when they're first starting off, they're like, I'm gonna go do TikTok and I'm going to do LinkedIn and I'm going to do Instagram and I'm going to do them all at the same time. And my response is, have you ever tried to learn Japanese and Spanish and French all at the same time?
Right.
and Latin all at and the answer is no, that's stupid. So
right.
why are you doing all the platforms at the same time? And again, I also tell people just understand where your audience is, right? So if you're a business owner, know what platform your audience is going to be on. So if you want to go fishing and you want to go catch blue marlin, you probably wouldn't go to your backyard pond to try and catch a blue marlin.
Right.
Like, you see what I'm saying? Right. So, figure out where your audience is and then go put your energy and attention into focusing on that platform for a while and learning the language, learning that platform to figure out how to try to get that platform to convert. Like, for example, I'll give some ideas. Whenever we have someone who's in the career space, right? Well, you can find that audience on Instagram and you can find them on Facebook. You can find them on TikTok. But one of the easiest places to find them is LinkedIn, right? It's just a no-brainer. Like you can find specific careers, you can find specific levels, whether they're executive director. Like LinkedIn is just so easy to find your audience. So, if you're trying to fish for those career people, you go to LinkedIn, right? And so that kind of makes it a little bit easier. If you're this one's surprising. If you're in the health and wellness space and you're helping people lose weight, right? You can actually do that on pretty much every platform.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So at that point, you just got to like, we have coaches that are making multiple six figures on LinkedIn for health and wellness. We have coaches on Facebook. We have coaches on Instagram. And we have coaches on TikTok. They can literally be on any platform because who wants to lose weight? What, 90% of the world or something, right? It's insane, right? How like the amount of people that actually want to lose weight. So they're all over every platform. So that one's a pretty easy one. We found for us helping coaches, majority of coaches are, at least the coaches that we work with, a majority of them are on Instagram and Facebook right now. They're on TikTok as well. But like I mentioned, we're still like, even at the place that we're at, we're still learning, just Japanese, and it keeps growing and growing. So we don't try and go into too many different platforms at the same time. We try and focus on one or two and really, really emphasize it.
Zander, are you proactively marketing right now, or is the business kind of finding you now?
A little bit of both.
Hmm.
A little bit of both. Business definitely finds us, but we are absolutely actively marketing as well.
So I have a question for you in that space, because
Yeah.
I get approached by coaches quite a bit, right? And a lot of it comes on LinkedIn, actually, because I'm in financial services. A lot of people, they see what we're doing out there, and I get these inbox messages just about daily, and it's literally like, "Will you marry me? I'm going to offer you this, 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 and this." And I read about the first 2 words of that, and I delete it because I know it's the exact. And by the way, the worst thing that they do is say, "Hey, David J." Right? As opposed to, "Hey, Dave," or something like that, because I'm on there as David J. Harder, right?
Yeah.
That's when you know that you want to cut it off. But can you share with the folks, and when you're trying to create an engagement in social, or on one of those platforms, what your approach looks like if you're being proactive?
Yeah. So the proactivities, I'll give you a little analogy. If you were, are you a door-to-door fan? Do you love when people come and do door-to-door sales at your home?
I respect it. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it. But
most people aren't the biggest fan, and this is why I'm going to use this as an analogy, right?
Yep.
So, because I think it's perfect, because you kind of just gave the perfect like LinkedIn analogy of a door-to-door salesman, right? So he's coming into your personal space, and he's coming in hot, and he's ready to sell you the world, right? So the analogy that I give is like, if you have 100 homes that you want to potentially, we'll call it, they're selling knives or whatever it is, right? So if you've got 100 homes that you want to sell these knives to, you could go door to door to every single one, and you go knock on the door, and they open the door, and you go, "Hey, Dave," or, "Hey, my name's Zander. What's your name?" And you go, "Dave." And you go, "Oh, how's it going? You having a great day?" And you start some meaningless conversation. And then, eventually it slips out, "By the way, is your knife set the last set of knives you ever want to own?" And you're like, "Oh my God," slam the door. Right.
Yep.
And so, whenever it comes out that this person's trying to sell you something, we turn off and we go, "Screw this." So you'll get some great sales that way, but it's not very fun.
No, not at all.
It's not very fun. And talk about like, having to get over a fear of rejection. You're going to get a lot of rejection. So maybe that's actually good for a little personal development, but not really the direction we want to go. So, what you really want to do is, you never want to be an uninvited pest. You want to be an invited guest, right? So the way that I explain this to people is like, if you made a little flyer that said, "Hey, I'm having a knife party at the end of the block, Tuesday at 5:30. If you're looking for a new knife set, we'd love to have you." Right. And you just slide that under everybody's door, right? Little less invasive, nothing crazy, not taking up anybody's personal time. Right. And they take this flyer, and there's going to be a lot of people that are like, "Not for me." They recycle it. No harm, no foul. Right. But then, of the 100 houses, maybe 20, 25 of them are like, "I could actually use a knife set." And they're actually going to come to your little knife party at the end of the block. Yep. All 25 of these people have now raised their hand and basically said, "You are no longer an uninvited pest. You're an invited guest right now. I want you to tell me about these knives. I want to talk to you about what they can do for me and why I just gave you permission to sell me." So this is what's called permission-based sales, right? So when you ask permission, or you invite people to something where you can then have the conversation, it takes away all the salesiness. It takes away all the uncomfortable conversation. And frankly, it just makes it, you can have an honest conversation, and you can really connect with people, and not have to feel like you're hiding something back here that you're about to pop out behind the corner. Like, "I gotcha, buy my knives." Right. So, the most important thing is, make sure that whenever you're talking about whatever you're talking about, make sure that they've been given the opportunity to say yes or no. I want permission to talk about this thing that's going on. And that's true for whatever platform you're on, right? So, a good example is on Instagram, right? I'm sure everybody on Instagram is, been on Instagram, or at some point somebody reaches out to you that you have no idea who they are. They're not following you, and they're just like, "Don't you want to buy this?" Or, "I can help you do this." And you're like, "Where did you come from?" Right? But for example, if I have, we have you guys can go check out my Instagram. If you go to @Zander Fryer, every now and then we'll just invite people. Hey, if you're looking to grow your coaching business, shoot me a DM, right? Or comment below, right? And if you comment below, we'll reach out and we'll have a conversation. So it's if you're interested in having the conversation, we'd love to chat. And then they give you permission, and then you go have the conversation.
This is Zander Fryer. We are Infinity X, giving the stage and microphone to human excellence. The replay will be available on weareinfinityx.com and We Are Infinity X YouTube. And Zander, last question be, we only have a couple more minutes here, but as you look 5 years into the future, what does your company look like, and what type of impact and influence are you having on the world?
Didn't we just say that I'm a millennial? You think I can see 5 years into the future?
All right, 5 minutes into the future.
Maybe 5 days, 5 weeks. No, so 5 years into the future, our coaching business as of right now, where we're coaching coaches to actually build entrepreneurially and build their businesses. That's going to be the major focus for the next 2 to 3 years. We're scaling rapidly, and honestly, my goal there is to help. We want to get to somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 coaches, because if I put it this way, if I can help 10,000 coaches build a full-time business, whether they're 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, doesn't matter to me. I need them to be doing it full-time, because the truth is, like, these coaches want to serve the world.
Yep.
Right. And it's because most of them don't understand the money and all of that sort of stuff, the business and the marketing, that they don't get to really serve as many people as really need them. Now, if I can help 10,000 people go full time, and they in the future then go help even just 100 people, well, then I've changed the lives of 1 million people. Right. Well, what if they go forward and help 1,000 people? Then I've changed the lives of 10 million people. What if a handful of them go forward and they help another 10,000 people? Now I'm really getting up there in terms of the impact that we're having. Just by helping these coaches be able to build businesses. So the next stage in our business, 5 years from now, we will have launched the second stage, which is actually certifying coaches, helping them learn how to coach. So this is kind of the precursor to launching the business. Personally, we've like I mentioned, we've helped over 800 coaches that have been certified by this organization or by this department or by this whatever certification or this degree. And none of these certifications, at least that I found, do a great job of really positioning coaches to make it a business and have a full-time income while changing people's lives. So what we found from our studies is the majority of certifications, somewhere between 90 to 95% of coaches who get certified never do anything with it, which is heartbreaking to me. So the next stage in the business is, we want to come in and just fix that, because I think it's a huge issue. So really teeing people up for success when it comes to also learning the tactical skills of how to coach well, how to serve others as a leader. So 5 years from now, we'll see where that is.
Incredible. Incredible. Drop the mic on that one, folks. This is Zander Fryer. You can find him on Instagram @Zander Fryer, 800 plus coaching clients, best-selling author. The podcast one more time, Zander.
Shit you don't learn in college.
I love it. It's amazing. The shit you do not learn in college. That is amazing. Hey, by the way, Zander, I'd love to connect with you offline. I have some ideas. We at my firm have found some ways where we help influencers like yourself to further monetize their brand. And we've found ways where we can create additional conditioned conversations for people, not only like yourself, but the people you're coaching. So I love everything that you have shared with me today.
Perfect.
And I see you in my future, brother, and I would really, really like to build off of today's conversation. I thought it was unbelievable. We talked about brain science. We talked about strategy for business. We talked about verticals. We talked about social media. Replay again. We are infinityx.com. We are InfinityX YouTube. Zander, any parting shots for the folks here before we call tonight?
I would just say, the last thing is just, face your fears, take courageous action, move forward. Fear is the only thing that's preventing you from a life with more money, more meaning, more freedom. So
unbelievable. Zander, you are a rock star, brother. And I really, really loved having you on here. Folks, again, this is Zander Fryer. We are Infinity X Replay. We are Infinity X YouTube, and we are InfinityX.com. Zander, look forward to co-creating with you more, brother. And folks, again, this has been Zander Fryer. Thank you so much. Hope you got a tremendous amount of value out of it. Until next week, folks, we are Infinity X saying have a great night.